Are you training for muscle growth but worried about staying injury free? Well, in today's video, I'm sharing 5 essential hypertrophy principles to help you build muscle safely while keeping your joints and body healthy. And yes, I know it's hypertrophy for some people, but I'll be saying hypertrophy and I'll be saying it a lot, like I would aluminium. We good? All right, good. Let's get into it. So principle 1, for this, we first need to really nail down what are you training for. So if you're just wanting to look good, build muscle and be healthy, work to minimize niggles and issues with joints with more of a longevity outlook so you can train for a long time because you enjoy it, and how you lift becomes very important, and you're going to want to follow all of these principles. If you're powerlifting and mainly bothered about strength and numbers, this is very different from just wanting to look good. So how bothered are you about the numbers? If you're not competing in powerlifting and you're more bothered about training long term, then I would follow this approach. So hypertrophy training isn't just about lifting heavy weights. It's about lifting them correctly to maximize muscle gains. But for these points, it's not just maximizing at the expense of anything else. It's also looking longer term, training smarter, not necessarily harder. For powerlifting, getting the numbers up, that is all about lifting as heavy weight as you can from A to B. Like a bench press, you want to touch the chest and straighten your arms. The prime concern isn't about how much the chest is working, it's just about getting the bar up. For hypertrophy, form is a huge principle in terms of actually feeling the muscles you're working. Getting some mind-muscle connection in and proper form ensures the right muscles are being targeted and you can reduce injury risk. Take time to learn the basics of the movement you're doing and really feeling the muscle before you increase the load. And this brings us nicely onto principle 2. So we've established the difference between training for powerlifting, moving weight most effectively, and training for hypertrophy, utilizing the weight most effectively. It's not about lifting heavy, but is more about intensity and getting towards failure, or at least 1 to 2 reps in reserve. And there are different ways to do this to ensure keeping joints as healthy as possible. We used to think time and attention and tempo was one of the most important things, and it had to be in a certain rep range like 6 to 12 for ideal hypertrophy. But now it seems that anything from 5 to 30 reps, and as long as getting the intensity towards failure, then how you're lifting and what tempo in that doesn't matter as much. However, we shouldn't throw all this other stuff out, and I'll explain why. The key to muscle growth over time is progressive overload. The thing is, muscles tend to adapt a lot quicker than tendons and structures in the joint do. So we tend to lift a lot heavier quicker because strength goes up, but the strain on the joints and the tendons become higher before they've truly had time to adapt, so injury risk increases. What you can do instead is work on timed attention and tempo, because it means you can use a lighter weight but still get the same intensity and make that light weight feel a lot harder. So take a bench press, for example. You can lower slowly, get as much stretch as you can at the bottom with a slight pause, not just resting the weight, but really feeling the muscle. Then as going back up, don't fully lock out, have no pause at the top and slowly lower. Combining that with principle 1 of really trying to feel the muscles you're working, and you'll still get towards failure and good hypertrophy, but with a much lighter weight, giving everything chance to catch up. This is very different than just lifting really heavy, bashing reps out until failure. Both will work in hypertrophy terms, but the control with lighter weights utilizing tension and tempo so it feels heavier will be much nicer for the joints and help reduce that injury risk. You can periodize the reps over weeks, so working something like 8 and then 10 and then 12, so getting that progressive overload as well. You also don't want to be hitting failure every single workout on everything. Have periods where you'll deload, taper, and have more reps in reserve to also give the body and other structures that time to catch up with adaptations safely. Principle 3. This is something loads of people have been doing wrong for decades, and it's getting a good warm-up. We'll explain what people normally do wrong and how to do a good one. The biggest problem is people not doing one, just jumping straight in. I mean, you'll get away with that if you're younger, but not as you're getting older. The next is just doing a generic warm-up and thinking that's enough. You don't even need to be doing a generic warm-up, so don't go on the treadmill and think that's a good enough warm-up for then training chest. You need to be specific with it. So if about to do a bench press, you need to warm that movement up so all the joints and tendons are ready for it. The nervous system is gearing up for that particular movement, and this then goes to any different movement you are then going to in the same session to help reduce that injury risk. So if you've done bench but are then going to do flies, you need to warm flies up properly. Don't just dive straight into it or just do a really quick warm up because the chest is warmed up from the previous exercise. You need to warm the movement up to get the joints and nervous system ready for that new movement. If just going from flat to incline bench, this isn't as bad because the movement is so similar, but you still have to have a warm up set in. What we suggest generally is whatever weight and rep range you're kicking for your working sets, then do a warm up with 50% of the weight for 2 to 2.5 times the number of reps, and a second set at 70 to 75% of the weight for 1 to 1.5 times the reps, then go into your working sets. Principle 4. These are things outside the gym to ensure proper recovery. Now, these actually make a massive difference, especially to injury risk, but also to results. Muscle growth doesn't happen during your workouts, it happens during recovery. Sleep is majorly important. If sleep deprived, you'll really be increasing injury risk, but diet also is big. You also need to be getting enough protein. Generally, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight will cover bases, but also making sure to get enough calories in to support the workout and loads. Easily enough if working on a bulk, but if cutting, don't go too low or lose too fast as recovery will be impacted and injury risk increased. Also, give enough time between workouts before training the same body part. Generally, once all soreness is gone, you should be fine to hit it again. Principle 5, the one missed the most by almost anyone and never really mentioned, and is not to train just for aesthetics. It's easy to focus on the mirror muscles like chest and biceps, but neglecting other really important areas of the body should not be missed. Simple examples are like the lower back. You'll get some work when training, but never anything focused to it, like the biceps would, for example. Same with the hip flexors, and then other things like the neck, which gets no love. The problem after a while of training though is that you'll have some muscles that are really well developed and others that are then less developed, leading to imbalances and then more likely to have injuries and niggles in those less developed muscles. You want to work on overall balance so everything is developed evenly. Now, we have loads of other videos related to gym training and building muscles effectively, so check some of those out. We also have gym programs available which are more in depth with everything programmed out, including these principles, and particularly principle 5, making sure to also hit those neglected muscles for proper balance in the body. The link for that is in the description. And remember, your long-term progress depends on staying healthy, so take these principles seriously.